Jai Hind, I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching the Chanakya Dialogues English. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel. A lot has been going on in Sri Lanka. The president has apparently fled to Singapore. The streets have been overtaken by common citizens who are fed up with the way the country has been governed for the past many years. We have a special guest today, a guest who's going to help us shed some light on this entire impasse that is happening in Sri Lanka. I have with me, and it is my honor to welcome Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, former GOC 15 Corps and also the Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir. Sir, Jai Hind, and a very warm welcome to our show, sir.
Jai Hind, and thank you very much, Gaurav.
Sir, my first question to you is, sir, this current situation as it is unfolding in Sri Lanka, a lot has happened. But can you give us a historical perspective, sir? What do you think actually happened that led to such a scenario? Because this seems like breakdown of the constitutional machinery. It seems that people are out on the streets. They have been surprisingly non-violent, sir, to a very large extent. They have been surprisingly non-violent. But what led to this day?
Thank you, and very good. I think that's the right note to start on. Although I won't go into too much detail, some of your questions will get answered as we go along, and perhaps you could reinforce those questions once again. But let me start by telling all our viewers that my credentials for someone to be authoritatively commenting on Sri Lanka are primarily the fact that I have been a very proud member of the Indian peacekeeping force in Operation Pawan, which, as you know, started from early August 1987 and ended on the 22nd of March 1990. I've served both in the Vavuniya Mulaitu sector and also in the Jaffna sector, and was one of the last few people to withdraw from the island. Having said that, I've been watching Sri Lanka for many, many years. It's a fascinating place, a country of 21 million. That's about all the population is. But remember, it's not a homogeneous demography that you find there. You have a Sinhala ethnicity, you have Tamil, you have Muslim, and among the Sinhalas you have Buddhists, you have Christians, you have Hindus. So it's a mishmash of different ethnicities, different faiths, all living together on this pearl-shaped island. Now, there have been problems of getting together. Ideologically, there's been a major problem. The Sinhala in majority are the ones who have always ruled the roost, but they have not given enough space perhaps to the minorities who have over a period of time struggled to get that space. And that has led to problems. Since the early 80s, we found a major civil war-like situation in Sri Lanka. Otherwise, as our viewers would know, Sri Lanka has the blessings of everything. Good weather, good terrain, good soil. You throw a few seeds and you'll find fruits coming out anywhere and everywhere. So its economy is something which was made to flourish. But it is this internecine ethnic problem, demographic problem, which has brought it to a very, very sorry state. And it fought a civil war right from the early 80s till 2009. And in 2009, they used very strong arm tactics to overcome the resistance of the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, the LTT, one of the most famous, very notorious terrorist organizations in the world. The problem was that a victory of this kind in 2009 did not lead to peace. It's a very interesting analogy, Gaurav, to compare the situation of Ukraine to Sri Lanka, and people may just wonder that I may have gone bonkers comparing these two situations. But remember, NATO also won the Cold War and did not know how to handle its own victory, which is what led it to press Russia far too much, which ultimately led to the situation which it is in today. And this is exactly what has been happening to Sri Lanka, where the victory of 2009 could not be exploited to gain peace. Rather than gain peace, it led to even more problems. And you find that because of its strategic location, there are international interests in it, the United States, China, India, by virtue of its fact that it is its neighbor. And as a result of all this mishmash, you find that people have invested in families, in a galaxy of leaders who have let down the nation. Amount of corruption, misgovernance, and that is what has led to this situation today where Sri Lanka owes $51 billion in terms of its debt. It has to service $7 billion of debt this year alone. And as a startup on the economic side, we can say India has extended a $4 billion credit line and support to Sri Lanka, which has virtually been used up in a matter of weeks. And there's much more to look forward to even now. So that is the situation at the moment with the President Rajapaksa, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the former president, having just resigned and now gone to Singapore. And the door is now wide open. 22nd of July, the parliament meets to elect a new president. And you have a acting president at the moment in Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is officiating as president for the moment to hold the fort, because you need someone to be in authority.
So, sir, in 2019, sir, Gotabaya Rajapaksa was an extremely popular leader, sir. People loved him. At least that is what was the sensing. Today, he's a fugitive, sir. So, what happened in the past 3 years? What exactly went wrong in the past? You've told us right from the early 80s what happened, sir. But a popular leader comes to power 2019. This is 2022. A popular leader, today a fugitive. What happens?
This is the crux of it. And I'm glad you asked me this question, because these 3 years are very important to explain. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, younger brother of Mahinda Rajapaksa, the president, who did his 2 terms and constitutionally could not get a 3rd term. Gotabaya was the defense secretary in 2009 when they decided to go in for a hard conventional campaign to fight the LTT. He was a former army officer of the Sri Lankan army himself. And he pulled out all the stops and did not bother about human rights or anything. He said Sri Lanka had enough as far as the LTT was concerned. They defeated the LTT. 200,000 strong army was set up virtually to do this. You can imagine a 200,000 strong army means for a country of 21 million, 2 lakhs. India, a country of 1.4 billion, has got an army of 12 million, of 1.2 million. So you can compare the figures, how big the Sri Lankan army actually is. What happened thereafter was that over a period of time, in 2019, Gotabaya was elected president on the backing of the fact that his party, his brother's party, all of them, the family got together, had become extremely popular because of the fact that they had vanquished the LTT. The Sri Lankan economy was not doing too badly till then at that time, and he was a popular figure because of his, typical of his personality and ability to take decisions, etc. There were a few decisions which were absolutely the ones which upset the entire apple cart. The first of them was he reduces. Now, you can reduce the taxes as a populist measure, but if you don't have any other means to bring money into the coffers of the state, then you are going to find it yourself compromised. And therefore, the Sri Lankan economy, Sri Lankan government had very little money to spend because of this very populist measure. The second thing was that they didn't have enough money to import fertilizer. And so Gotabaya gave a very, very awkward order to say that he put a ban on fertilizer and said everything will be done. The agriculture of Sri Lanka will be without fertilizer. Will be without fertilizer, and therefore you found the tea crop. Tea is a major export item of Sri Lanka. The tea crop, the rice crop, everything failed. As a result of food crisis, a foreign exchange crisis erupted just around then. All this could have been set aside, it could have been stabilized if tourism was going, because tourism is a big industry for Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, the Easter bombings of April 2019 and the pandemic came together and upset the entire tourist industry. And that led to almost bankruptcy, no money coming in at all. Gotabaya was not an economist. His brother, Bessel, was not an economist, who was a finance minister. None of them really took good advice. You had India here with some of the finest economists going anywhere in the world. They could have taken advice from us, but they did not. They went about doing everything in their own way. Their loans increased. As you are aware, everyone is aware that China was one of the elephants in the room. It had gone and invested in Hambantota, and when the Sri Lankans couldn't pay back for that money which was invested in Hambantota, they gave a 90-year lease to China to continue occupying the Hambantota port. So all these reference, the Mahinda Rajapaksa airport next to the Hambantota port, all these became white elephants in which money had been invested for no reason at all. And that's the reason why you found the collapse of the economy, the collapse of the state, fuel, medicine, and food. Three essential items disappearing completely, and the streets therefore being taken over by the mobs.
So we understand that India has extended a loan facility up to $4 billion US. And you said that had been used up in a matter of weeks. But what exactly are India's stakes? I mean, speaking geopolitically, sir, apart from having a stable neighbor, which is always good, what are India's stakes in Sri Lanka, sir?
Very interesting. The fact that India on 29th of July 1987 signed the Rajiv Gandhi Jayawardene agreement, accord, should give us the idea and projection that India has got very deep stakes as far as Sri Lanka is concerned. First of all, important part of its neighborhood, near broad region. Secondly, it is in the Indian Ocean, right there, right next to the various sea lanes of communication which go from the Suez and the Gulf region, or right below south of India, up to the Straits of Malacca and beyond into the Pacific Ocean, leading up to that very important area of Shenzhen, Hong Kong, the eastern coast of China, where all the manufacturing of China is done. So this is a very crucial area, very close to these sea lanes. Important ports, Colombo itself, and Trincomalee on the eastern side, a natural harbor. The presence of 110 of those huge, humongous fuel tanks, which were set up in the Second World War, and many of them have been repaired and serviced by India in the recent past, perhaps also, this is what I learned. And this has the capability to stock a huge amount of strategic reserve of oil, if necessary at all. Besides that, the demographic connect, southern India, particularly Tamil Nadu, the Tamil connect with the Tamil population of Jaffna, Vavuniya, Trincomalee, right, extending up to even up to portions of Batticaloa. So there's a connect here. India does not want a subnational kind of an identity to emerge in the conjunction between the two regions in Sri Lanka and in southern India. This is something that may not happen, but this is something which you have to possibly fend off, possibly look out for at times. Besides that, the possibility of a major power, a big power coming and establishing bases there. The Americans were very interested in Trincomalee, and we heard in 1987, and it was rumored at that time that one of the reasons why India went in a hurry into Sri Lanka as part of Operation Pawan was because there was an American threat of the possibility of it, not by intervention, but by agreement, probably entering into Sri Lanka and taking over the port of Trincomalee. Similarly with China, China as our northern neighbor, and now with this interest in Sri Lanka, it becomes our southern neighbor virtually. So two sides, on Pakistan on one side, so three sides you find the Chinese influence and presence. So keeping all this in mind, and the fact that turbulent conditions in Sri Lanka also lend to create turbulence and a fair amount of sentiment among the Tamil population in India, we have obviously got to continue keeping our finger on the pulse at all times. And that's exactly what we are doing at the moment. But I must complete this particular intervention by saying, I think the government of India is doing a splendid job in holding back. It is making no unnecessary statements. It is not giving unnecessary advice publicly or anything. There probably is a back channel, which is how it should be. And lots of advisories are being given. And economically, India is playing its role. It is this economic intervention which will hopefully be remembered for very long by the Sri Lankan people.
So, you mentioned China, and you mentioned about those, oil storage facilities, Second World War which India helped repair and which the Americans were very, at one point in time, very excited about, which forced the Indians to come into Sri Lanka, and hence one of the factors that led to the launch of Operation Pawan, sir, in Sri Lanka, the Indian peacekeeping force. My question is, sir, what exactly are China's stakes? Because the way you paint the picture is China to the north, China to the east, China to the south, and also China to the west, because we have Gwadar to the west, sir. So, encircled by China, in the middle there is India, sir. What will you say about this, sir, about China's stakes there?
A lot of people will challenge the statement if I even mention a string of pearls, because that is something which is contentious and a lot of people don't like talking about it. I continue to believe that the Chinese strategy has essentially been that to encircle India through a string of pearls. Pearls in this case being those nations with whom China has established a strong politico-strategic relationship and who owe something to China. That is exactly what we are finding in many of our smaller neighbors at the moment. Among them, Sri Lanka is one of the most important, for the simple reason that the Chinese have always feared this very long stretch from the Gulf to the Straits of Malacca. This long stretch of the Indian Ocean is an area where the Chinese have very little influence and very little physical presence. Since their sea lines of communication all go through this, and the energy routes are flow through this, and all the container traffic also goes back, this is exactly what services the Chinese economy. The Chinese achieved 14% growth at one stage, primarily because these lanes are without any turbulence. There is no threat, there is no major threat to any of these lanes. Now, this is what they fear most, that if India chooses, or why India? If a conglomeration of nations put together choose to trap China into some kind of a situation where its sea lanes of communication are cut off, the Chinese economy will suffer hugely. And this is what they are worried about: in naval power, maritime power, the possibility of India, UK, US, Australia, Indonesia, Vietnam, all these countries putting together their maritime power and being able to contest China. Chinese Navy is not of that order which can do it. So this is one nation, Sri Lanka, right in the center here, which bears the potential. I'm not saying the Chinese have done enough so far, which bears the potential to establish that kind of influence, that kind of presence, leading to ultimately a physical presence when the PLA Navy is completely a blue water Navy, perhaps looking for that kind of support here. Hambantota, the fact that the Chinese invested in Hambantota, and incidentally, it's well rumored, well known, that the first offer for Hambantota was actually made to India. And we did not accept it because of our reluctance of dealing with Sri Lanka ever since we burnt our fingers in 1987, 1990. But the Chinese went in immediately. And they took over Hambantota, invested almost $2 billion in the Mahinda Rajapaksa airport and in the harbor and the port itself. But that is something which is still in their hands. And although they have not made any great use of it so far, and lots of naval officers will perhaps contest what I'm saying, but at least the stakes are there. The presence of the Chinese is there very much. What surprises me, however, Gaurav, is that in the current run of things in this crisis, the Chinese have been very quiet. And particularly when the Sri Lankans have put in a specific request, I think for something to the tune of about $1.4 billion as a bailout or a credit line, there has been no response in the last 4 to 6 weeks from the Chinese. This is something that beats me. I really can't understand it.
So there were a lot of rumors in India that the Indian army is stepping in and again going into Sri Lanka, and twice the Foreign Office has had to come forward and say that no, there is nothing of this sort. We are not going into Sri Lanka. There is no intervention, military intervention by the Indian Armed Forces in Sri Lanka, something like an Op Pawan Part 2. Now, having said that, sir, India has tried to financially help Sri Lanka to the best of its capabilities, and the Foreign Office has said that we will continue to do so. What do you think, sir? Do you think that if push comes to shove, if actually things deteriorate to such a level, there could be a call? Would it be a wise call if the Indian army was sent into Sri Lanka, sir?
I think we are very far from that situation, Gaurav. And this is wild rumor mongering in India, more out of social media boredom, if nothing else, if you may ask me. I think the Sri Lankan army has been extremely mature. A 200,000 strong army, which produced some very fine leaders like Field Marshal Fonseca, who led the army during the 2009 blitzkrieg, so to say, in the Jaffna Peninsula against in northern Sri Lanka against the LTT. In this current situation, you have not seen the Sri Lankan army making an awkward statement so far. They have not even, they have stepped out into the streets in certain areas. They have not fired a shot. In this last 3 months of the crisis, which is still very much on, we have found one fatality and perhaps a couple of people injured. Now, that's not the kind of situation which I say is completely out of control. At least the Sri Lankan army is there. Now, one of the major reasons to my assessment why the Sri Lankan army does not want to step in, it doesn't want to be blamed tomorrow, very correctly. Most armies will want to see that, not to be in that kind of a situation. Secondly, if the army's footprint is on the control, on the governance, you will find that the international monetary institutions will start taking a back step. In this, one of the most important players in this is the IMF. Then the World Bank also similarly so. So if a consortium of nations is trying to put together something to bail out China, Sri Lanka, I'm sure they will themselves be a little chary about the fact that now you have a military presence in governance. So the way things have been so far is good. If we really want to recover from this situation, let it be like this. I think, first of all, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs is far too mature. We have a far too mature political leadership to even imagine this kind of a thing. Which I said is essentially rumor mongering and nothing else. We have learned our lessons from the past. Perhaps 1987 to 1990 taught us that lesson, that there is no need to do military intervention for this kind of a thing. There can be so much done through political, social, and economic engineering, which will probably give you greater dividends. And that's exactly what India is doing at the moment, keeping all the options open. But the economic option is the strongest. But having said that, I dare say, one of the issues which India should be concerned about is the possibility of a breakdown of some elements exploiting the situation of turbulence and breakdown of law and order. You see, I'm reminding you of the April 2019 Easter bombings and what the Islamic State did in Sri Lanka at that time. That kind of a situation can emerge again. And if you remember, it had its linkages. The networks were all from here, from within southern India. So this is something that we should always be concerned about.
So my last question to you is, where do you see Indo-Sri Lanka relations going in the future? How will the current impasse impact our relations with Sri Lanka, and how do you see the future for both the countries, sir?
I think my answer is based upon my interactions in a couple of panel discussions with Sri Lankan intellectuals. And in each one of them, the Sri Lankan intellectuals have ended the discussion on a note of utter confidence, expressing their gratitude for the manner in which India has displayed a large-heartedness, reach out to a neighbor, extended enough credit lines, and looking forward to even extending much more. So that is a positive. So the negativity of the past, I'm not saying that the negativity of the past has been completely overcome. No, it's going to take very long to overcome that. But we've started on a note of utter positivity, and that's a very, very good sign. We will have to stave off a lot of efforts by external players to try and influence conditions, influence the players in Sri Lanka. Depends on 22nd of July, who comes to power, which party comes to power. Is it going to be an all-party consensus kind of a candidate who emerges as the president? Whatever it is, India must be quick off the it should be immediately into it and not taking charge, but at least reaching out immediately and ensuring before anyone else comes in, we extend the assistance. And we have to see this through. We have to have the stamina for it. This is not something which was going to disappear overnight. The kind of crisis which we are seeing in the streets based upon the shortages which are there, electricity, fuel, medicine, and food, all these things. We will have to perhaps tighten our own belt to some extent to extend this assistance even to as little a population as 21 million people. So I do see a brighter future in Indo-Sri Lankan relations, subject to the fact that the Chinese don't come out with some kind of a surprise package at this stage. We should be on the lookout for that. And we should ensure that our proximity, physical proximity itself, our ethnic proximity to a great extent is exploited to the hilt.
Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, with Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, he told us the genesis of the problem, why this is happening in Sri Lanka. He also told us that the president who has just fled was very popular in 2019. What happened in 3 years? Why is there almost, as far as the optics suggest, a condition of civil war-like situation? Civil war is perhaps too harsh a term, but the fact that the entire population is out on the roads is scary to a common person like me. We spoke about the LTT, we spoke about Operation Pawan, when India sent a peacekeeping force to Sri Lanka, in which General Hasnain was very much a part of. And lastly, how do we see China and India-Sri Lanka relations going ahead? Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like this video. Thank you very much for your time, and Jai Hind.